Seeing as the first shipment of KiwiRail's DX locomotives are now on their way to their new home in South Africa, I thought this would be an appropriate time to go through my archives and pay tribute to these classic diesel locomotives. For each of the 8 DXs in that first shipment, I'll try to include at least one piece of footage and one significant memory involving them. I'm a northerner born and raised, so I very much miss the days when these locomotives were still a common sight in the North Island. For anyone who doesn't know, the DX class was built by General Electric between 1972 and 1976. They were originally a variant of GE's U26C export model, but have been very heavily modified over the years. For instance, 4 DXs even received electronic fuel injection in the early 2020s. The DXs have served New Zealand's railway network for well over 50 years, but in more recent times, KiwiRail have started to introduce the new Stadler-built DM class to replace the DXs. To anyone who's interested in the older locomotives, my advice is to go out and see them as much as possible while you still can. DXB 5016, originally DX 2600, is notable for being the class leader and working in New Zealand for an impressive 54 years. In the early 2010s, I used to see 5016 and a few other DXBs working in the Bay of Plenty a fair bit. At some point, she lost the KiwiRail sticker from her short hood and never regained it. According to my notes, the last time I saw the DX class leader was on Anzac Day 2023, when I caught her and 5097 arriving in Christchurch with train 930D from Dunedin. Here is some much older footage of 5016, recorded in Tauranga around 15 years ago. I never saw DXB 5068 all that much before she left for the South Island, but I do remember seeing her one time when my parents and I were allowed to look around the yard in Palmerston North. This was back in October 2010. I also remember the boxy-looking short hood with which 5068, 5229 and a few of their classmates were equipped. This footage of 5068 was recorded at Rolleston Station on the 23rd of April 2023. The first time I remember seeing DXB 5074 was back in June 2007, when she was still wearing Transrail Blue and had yet to be upgraded to DXB specifications. Perhaps the most significant memory I have of DXB 5074 comes from July 2019, when she was leading train 225 down the North Island main trunk with DL 9325. By this point, 5074 was the last DX still running in the North Island, and we chased her from the foot of the famous Raurimu spiral all the way to a little crossing on the northern side of Taihape. The last time I saw DXB 5074 was on the 10th of April 2026, when I caught her leading the Picton-bound train 736 past Christchurch's Addington station. Much like 5016, I remember DXB 5080 for the days when she used to be a common sight in the Bay of Plenty. I also used to think that her number rolled off the tongue quite well, and one time I was even allowed to have a look in her cab when she was parked by the turntable in Mount Maunganui. More specifically, roughly the same position where DXR 8022 was parked in this footage. I remember seeing 5080 on a particular day in November 2010, when she was helping DC 4260, of all locomotives, with getting the first 6 examples of the DL class settled on New Zealand metals after their journey on the ship from China. The last time I saw DXB 5080 was in October 2024, when I caught her arriving at Christchurch's Middleton Yard in a double header with DFT 7226. DXB 5114 sticks out in my memory primarily because of a time when my family and I were in Dannevirke, some day in October 2010. We happened to see 5114 parked in the crossing loop, though I can't remember which direction she was going in. In any case, the driver was kind enough to invite us into the cab, and it was the same driver who showed us around in Palmerston North. Another 5114 related memory comes from November 2016, when she happened to be in Napier while I was there too on a brief holiday. The last time I saw DXB 5114 was on the 8th of March 2025, when she was being shuffled around at Middleton Yard with classmates DXB 5068 and DXC 5258. I happen to still have this old photograph of DXB 5166 when she was still in Transrail Black, albeit with no TR lettering for whatever reason. This photograph was taken from on board an excursion train passing New Plymouth's Smart Road Yard in June 2007, and the excursion happened to be run by DX's 5022 and 5074 in a top and tail formation. Following her repaint in KiwiRail Phase 2 colours, 5166 mainly stood out to me because, for whatever reason, the KiwiRail sticker on the short hood was noticeably higher up than what I remember as being normal for the DXs. In any case, the last time I saw DXB 5166 was on the 8th of April 2026, when I found her parked near the turntable at Middleton Yard. I don't really have any significant personal memories involving DXB 5448, although I have considered her a notable member of the class for many years at this point. One such reason is admittedly grim, that being her involvement in the Waipahi collision of October 1999, which also involved DC 4202 and DFT 7254, not to mention the tragic loss of the DFT's driver. More recently, 5448 was overhauled as a DXB, despite all other DXs with numbers higher than 5166 being in the DXC subclass. I swear I remember recording footage of DXB 5448 in Palmerston North back in 2010, but that footage has since become lost media for reasons I don't remember. I remember DXC 5483 for being the last of her class to retain the Transrail blue livery, not being overhauled and repainted in KiwiRail Phase 2 until December 2010. The last time I saw DXC 5483 was on the 9th of April 2026, when she was the second locomotive in a triple header on empty coal train 849. I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't make a special mention of DXR's 8007 and 8022 as well, even though they haven't left New Zealand yet. The DXRs may not win any awards for their appearance, but they are still significant to me on a personal level, mainly due to the days when they were a common sight in Tauranga, not to mention the time I got to drive DXR 8022 in April 2010. In those days, it was interesting seeing 8022 continuing to wear the patched X toll rail livery for a fair while after 8007 had been repainted in KiwiRail Phase 2. Pity that neither of them ever wore Phase 1. If memory serves, I've only ever seen the two DXRs working together once. It was late in the evening on the 8th of April 2026. From a railfan's perspective, it is sad to see the DXs go, but at least the railfan community has decades of photographs and video footage by which the Dixies can be remembered. Do not quote me on this, but from what I've heard, one DX will be retained in New Zealand for preservation. I consider that to be a silver lining, as opposed to a silver fern, if it's true. As a bonus, I'd like to sign off with an older, but still particularly memorable, sighting of DXC 5391, which was recorded in May 2022. If you've got any significant memories involving a DX, feel free to leave them in the comments section,